So, I've come across a lot of times sort of this argument that, to be good, to be in the light, to be in the white, as it were, to be a white magician, or not even to be a magician, but just, just what is spiritually best? Then there's a question of it, like, so the left-hand path says that, we should just kind of almost like focus on our lust and use it to guide us. And this is a big thing of like Shaktism and Shaktism and just demonolatry and things of that nature. And I follow that school, right? I think that's simply the right way. And that's how I like to go about my life. As I can. I'm not, my lust isn't a what's the word? It's not a license to do whatever I want. It's not a license to violate someone else. It's simply, what it is licensed for is to simply, want what I want and go for things I actually want, And I think a lot of too many people are afraid to, go after what they simply desire. I think that's incredibly disturbing. So that's sort of what my point is. Now, there's some people who are into like sattvas, that they want to basically, what they want to do is they want to neutralize lust in their life. And by neutralizing lust in their life, they're doing a couple things. One of the things that they're doing is they're effectively saying no to life. And this is where I have a lot of issue with the right-hand path, is that, okay, renunciation, cool, but what's the point, right? What are we renouncing for? What is the function of this renunciation? What are we doing with it, right? There's no point to take on spiritual practices just because they sound spiritual, just because they sound good, just because, oh, I'm doing something spiritual, I'm doing the Dharma. According to who, this is something I find incredibly disturbing, is that the term itself is like holds within itself all the virtue, and like in a lot of these spiritual ideologies. I can say the word dharma all day. It doesn't make my actions dharmic. You know what I mean? I can, So what is actually dharmic? Well, it's complicated, and if someone is denying the true complication of these concepts, it's kind of questionable in my mind. So, I don't find it useful. The other thing that's on my mind in this is aliens. Okay, so Jesus says in the Bible that in heaven, the guy. Okay, I'll start with the context. The dude comes and asks Jesus, "Hey, my wife, has had like 4 husbands before me. In heaven, whose husband will she be?" And he's like, "Haha, you sweet summer child," or whatever. I hate that term, but it's sort of funny because I hate it. In this case, you sweet summer child. In heaven, you will not be given, you're not given as husband and wife as on earth. And the meaning of this, in my opinion, I think that this refers to what I see with aliens, that the aliens don't really, okay, the thing is they do get married, but they don't stick to it to the point of like, you know, they're not monogamous basically. They kind of do whatever they want, and they swing, and it's not even swinging, it's just complete whim. And to some people this might seem perverse, but consider that lust isn't the thing that's perverse. Lust is just the movement of the nature. What's actually perverse is the reactions that you have to your own lust. So lust is divine, lust is guidance, but most people can't handle that. I think this is really interesting for me to talk about because I drink ritually. I drink, like yesterday I drank 2 shots in my coffee, and I had a really powerful spiritual experience, and it was a good thing, you know? Most people can't get that. Like, I have one friend telling me how people he know are around drinking and how it's negatively affecting their lives, and you know, I don't go to parties and drink. I don't go to the bar, not often anyways, but even when I do, it doesn't get me the spiritual experiences. You know, so I get where he's coming from. It's actually very difficult to be on this level where you can drink, and I'm using drinking as a metaphor for lust here because, you know, people like to drink, right? People like to do all sorts of things to enjoy their bodies, to enjoy their life, to make their life better. And so, you know, but his drinking, it's like Paul, and then Paul says in later books, and I'm a little bit of conspiracy theorist in the vein of, like, as if Paul hijacked Christianity. I'm gonna say that's a maybe for me. Certainly wouldn't rule it out. But he said that, you know, if you're a more advanced Christian, then drinking won't bother you. Then, you know, circumcision won't bother you. He told one group of people that they need to get circumcised, and then he told another group of people, like, oh, you're so focused on circumcision, but you're like jackass, you're assholes about it. You know, Jesus didn't come so that everyone would be assholes. I think also the thing with Paul might actually be more complicated. It may be that, you know, basically he felt certain things needed to be done in the church and did it one way. I don't know, the infiltrator thing is a little bit of it's very neat. It's a very neat explanation, and I don't know if it's in reality that neat. Anyways, that's a bit of a tangent. But, you know, yeah, this is something in the church. You'll see that people that are new Christians really need rules. They need rules because they just can't, you know, they need that sanity check to tell them who they are. Because, you know, their identity isn't... This is a big thing in the spiritual journey, too, is, like, people will be really into astrology, but the real spirituality is very obtuse. And then eventually you come to the point, astrology is a tool, you know. Magic's magic's really the nectar of all of it, but, you know, you don't get so self-obsessed about a lot of these things, and it's really problematic actually to be, you know, overly obsessed with all these things. But particularly sexuality, I think, is a big one to kind of point at, because you know, people cheat, and, you know, it destroys families. Aliens are so advanced, like, okay, so if you're, you know, on a certain higher level of Christianity or something, if you're, you know, really have control of your senses and are operating at some higher consciousness, and then you, and so you drink, you partake of drink occasionally. You know, aliens are so much higher above that they'll just have all kinds of totally casual sex and think nothing of it, and they won't get jealous because they have such control of their own minds that they don't experience jealousy, you know. This is where I think it's very hard for, like, you know, basically earthlings to understand what the true reality of these things are, you know, because the truth is, if you put, you know, simply inserting yourself into, you know, a foreign other, what's intrinsically bad about that? You know what I mean? It's just flesh. It's just, I mean, if in another lifetime a different soul with a different body is, you know, having a different life, having intercourse with different people, then, you know, what's really the difference at that point of just doing it now? You know what I mean? And understand, this is so advanced. This is so advanced that, like, I'm not even sure if I should be. I've been encouraged by, like, let's say angels or aliens, whatever, to experiment, to, you know, do particular things. You know, but I'm not even sure if I'm ready for that. I was also encouraged to do Enochian, and I, for some reason, you know, just kind of stopped. Yeah, anyways, I think it's quite a safe conclusion then for me to say that, basically, when Jesus says that, you know, you'll not be given as husband and wife in heaven, he's alluding to the fact that in heaven, that, you know, on other planets that, you know, we will incarnate to once the cycle here is over, unless it's really all a lie, which is pretty cynical, but then, you know, at that point, at that point we'll basically all be, like, practically swinging. Okay, maybe not, you know. The thing is, this is with aliens, this is the other thing that's made me a little bit hesitant to actually, like, experiment. And, you know, I haven't really gotten, you know, let's say chances, but I've also not manifested them because I'm, you know, a little bit, what's the word, yeah, I just feel hesitant. Cause it's funny though, because I talked about this stuff on Facebook, and then I felt sort of the opposite impulse to be, like, celibate, and I think this just came from, this was just a very simple, like, opposite reaction. Because a lot of people were basically going against me because they were saying that, you know, sense control simply for the sake of sense control is, like, that's the thing, you know, and I simply disagree with that. So, yeah, anyways.